Here is a fun fact about horror films. As soon as one makes even a dime of profit, there's a very good chance that a sequel is on the way. If it's a genuine hit, you're not just getting a part 2, you're getting a whole terrifying universe of films. Today we're diving deep into the most enduring sagas of scares to find out which one has kept us on the edge of our seats the longest. Welcome to our countdown of the top 10 horror franchises by total runtime. But first, a quick note on the rules. We're only counting feature films. No TV shows, web series, or shorts. Sorry Chucky fans, that means the sci-fi series doesn't add to the doll's already impressive legacy. We're also excluding the Amityville horror films. Since the name is in the public domain, anyone can make one. That makes them a series of loosely connected movies at best, and not a true franchise. With that out of the way, let's start the clock and get to it. Back in 1993, audiences met a very different kind of horror villain. A mischievous, gold-obsessed creature with a deadly sense of humor. That was the start of the Leprechaun franchise, a franchise that quickly gained a reputation for blending supernatural horror with outrageous comedy. It also has the fun distinction of being Jennifer Aniston's very first movie role. At the center of the series is Warwick Davis, whose performance as the Leprechaun defined the first 6 films. His mix of gruesome kills and over-the-top one-liners gave the movies their unique identity. Rather than sticking to one formula, the Leprechaun traveled everywhere, from the streets of Los Angeles to Las Vegas to outer space and even the hood, in not just one, but 2 separate entries. In 2014, WWE Studios tried to reboot the series with Leprechaun Origins, a darker, more serious take that stripped away the camp. Fans weren't impressed. 4 years later, Leprechaun returns course-corrected, leaning back into the tongue-in-cheek style and positioning itself as a direct sequel to the original. While critics rarely gave the films much love, the series endured because of its cult following and willingness to embrace the absurd. For horror fans, Leprechaun is a reminder that not every franchise needs to take itself seriously. Sometimes the fun is in just how outrageous the ride can get. The Leprechaun franchise has a total of 8 films with a runtime of 11 hours and 49 minutes. When most people think of killer dolls, one name immediately comes to mind: Chucky. The Child's Play series kicked off in 1988 with a story about Charles Lee Ray, a serial killer who uses voodoo to trap his soul inside a good guy doll. What should have been a child's best friend quickly became one of horror's most twisted icons. Brad Dourif's voice work gave Chucky his trademark personality, vicious, sarcastic, and darkly funny. The early films leaned into suspense and slasher elements, but as the series went on, it shifted towards outrageous dark comedy. Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky embraced camp and gore, turning the franchise into something much crazier than its humble beginnings. Unlike many horror series that reboot over and over, Child's Play has mostly kept continuity. Creator Don Mancini stayed at the helm, guiding it through darker turns in Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, which revived interest from longtime fans. In 2019, MGM tried a fresh start with a reboot that reimagined Chucky as an AI-powered smart toy, this time voiced by Mark Hamill. But the real momentum stayed with the original timeline, which lived on through the Chucky TV series. Over more than 3 decades, the franchise has balanced scares, satire, and outrageous humor, carving out a unique space in horror history. Chucky isn't just a doll, he's proof that a killer personality can keep a franchise alive for generations. The Child's Play franchise has a total of 8 films with a runtime of 11 hours and 51 minutes. In 1974, horror changed forever when audiences were introduced to Leatherface and his chainsaw. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre wasn't just another slasher, it was raw, grimy, and unnervingly realistic, so much so that many viewers believed they were watching something close to a true story. The film's shocking reputation made it an instant classic, and over the decades the franchise has taken many different paths. Sequels like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 leaned into dark comedy, while others tried to expand the twisted lore of the Sawyer family. Each new installment wrestled with the challenge of recapturing the raw terror of the original. Like many long-running horror series, this one has been rebooted and reimagined multiple times. The 2003 remake brought Leatherface to a new generation with slicker production and plenty of gore, followed by a prequel, and later another reboot in 2017 with Leatherface. Most recently, Netflix revived the series in 2022 with a direct sequel to the original, bringing back Sally Hardesty for a final confrontation with the iconic killer. Across all its versions, Leatherface remains the brutal heart of the franchise, silent, unpredictable, and terrifying. Whether wielding his chainsaw in the gritty Texas heat or in a modern reboot, he's proof that some horror legends never die, they just keep finding new ways to come back. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise has a total of 9 films with a runtime of 13 hours and 45 minutes. Sleep is supposed to be safe, a place to rest, escape, and recharge. But in the world of A Nightmare on Elm Street, closing your eyes can be deadly. This series unleashed Freddy Krueger, the scarred figure with a glove of knives who doesn't just haunt teenagers, he haunts them in their dreams. What made Freddy stand out from other horror villains was his personality. Played by Robert Englund, he wasn't a silent killer lurking in the shadows. He cracked jokes, taunted his victims, and turned each death into a grotesque spectacle. That mix of terror and dark humor made him one of horror's most recognizable icons. Across the sequels, the franchise leaned into surreal dreamscapes and creative kills, giving Freddy a stage to showcase his twisted imagination. By the late 1980s, he wasn't just a movie monster, he was a cultural phenomenon, appearing on TV, toys, and even music videos. The series also wasn't afraid to reinvent itself. Wes Craven's New Nightmare broke the fourth wall years before Scream made meta horror mainstream, and Freddy vs. Jason delivered a showdown fans had been begging for. Even the 2010 reboot tried to reintroduce Freddy to a new generation, though most felt the character lived and died with Englund's performance. At its core, A Nightmare on Elm Street took something universal, sleep, and turned it into a source of fear. That simple idea helped Freddy carve out a legacy as one of the most unforgettable villains in horror history. The A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise has a total of 9 films with a runtime of 14 hours and 7 minutes. Some horror franchises are built around slashers, others around haunted houses, but Hellraiser opened the door to something far stranger. At the center of it all are the Cenobites, sadomasochistic beings from another dimension who blur the line between pleasure and pain. Leading them is Pinhead, with his grit of nails and cold, commanding presence, played memorably by Doug Bradley. The story began with Clive Barker's twisted imagination, adapted from his novella The Hellbound Heart. Rather than a masked killer, the early films explored obsession, morality, and the horrors of desire. When the mysterious puzzle box known as the Lament configuration is solved, it opens a gateway to the Cenobites' realm and unleashes hell on Earth. Over time, the franchise expanded with numerous sequels, each adding to the mythology in sometimes ambitious and sometimes confusing ways. Some entries barely featured Pinhead at all, while others turned him into the central attraction. Despite uneven quality, the imagery and themes of Hellraiser left an unmistakable mark on horror, inspiring comics, games, and endless debate among fans. More recently, the series was reimagined in 2022 with a new take on the story and a female Pinhead played by Jamie Clayton. Whether you see it as a supernatural slasher, gothic nightmare, or philosophical horror, Hellraiser endures because it dares to explore the darkest corners of human desire, and the terrible price of opening the wrong box. The Hellraiser franchise has a total of 11 films with a runtime of 15 hours and 17 minutes. Few horror series have had the cultural impact of Saw, a franchise that turned twisted morality games into a box office phenomenon. At its core is John Kramer, better known as Jigsaw, a dying man who believes he's helping people by forcing them to confront their own flaws through brutal traps. Survive and you're reborn. Fail and you pay the ultimate price. The first film, directed by James Wan and written by Lee Wanell, was a low-budget thriller that exploded into a global hit. Its shocking ending became legendary, and it set the stage for a yearly tradition. Every Halloween brought a new Saw film throughout the 2000s. Each sequel upped the ante with more elaborate traps while weaving a surprisingly tangled mythology of apprentices, betrayals, and flashbacks. What set Saw apart wasn't just the gore but the intricate puzzle of its storytelling. Fans came for the traps but stayed to untangle the timeline and piece together Jigsaw's larger plan. Even after John Kramer's death, the series kept finding ways to bring him back, cementing Tobin Bell's performance as iconic. The franchise has reinvented itself multiple times, from the spin-off Spiral starring Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, to Saw X, which returned to its roots and reminded fans why they fell in love with the series in the first place. With its mix of shocking violence, moral dilemmas, and that unforgettable "do you want to play a game" catchphrase, Saw carved out its place as one of modern horror's most enduring juggernauts. The Saw franchise has a total of 10 films with a runtime of 16 hours and 23 minutes. Deep space has always been a mystery, but in Alien it became a nightmare. Ridley Scott's original film introduced audiences to a version of science fiction horror that was as claustrophobic as it was terrifying. A simple mission of space truckers turns into a desperate fight for survival when a parasitic creature, later known as the Xenomorph, emerges as one of the most terrifying monsters ever put on screen. What made the franchise stand out was its ability to evolve. Aliens, directed by James Cameron, shifted gears from slow burn horror to explosive action, turning Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, into one of cinema's greatest heroes. Later entries like Alien 3 and Resurrection experimented with tone and style, though they often split fan opinion. Beyond the main series, the universe expanded with prequels like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, exploring the origins of the Xenomorphs and blending cosmic horror with philosophical questions about creation and humanity. The franchise also embraced crossover chaos with Alien vs. Predator, bringing two of horror's most iconic monsters together on the big screen. Through it all, the Xenomorph remains the centerpiece, an apex predator designed to hunt, evolve, and terrify. The sleek design by H.R. Giger gave it an otherworldly quality that's never been matched, ensuring its place as one of horror's and sci-fi's most enduring creations. From slow-burning terror to blockbuster spectacle, Alien has remained a benchmark for blending atmosphere, action, and raw fear in a way few franchises can match. The Alien franchise has a total of 9 films with a runtime of 17 hours and 16 minutes. Camp Crystal Lake started out as a peaceful summer getaway, but in Friday the 13th it became the birthplace of one of horror's most iconic killers. Jason Voorhees, the silent, hulking figure with a hockey mask, didn't fully appear in the first film, but he soon became the unstoppable force that would define the series. What set this series apart was its mix of slasher thrills and innovative kills, combined with the eerie atmosphere of isolated camps, lakes, and forests. Unlike many villains, Jason evolved over the series, going from a vengeful child spirit to a nearly indestructible killing machine, giving each sequel a clear sense of escalating danger. The series also experimented with tone, from the original suspense-driven horror to the more over-the-top entries in the 80s, and even a crossover with Freddy Krueger and Freddy vs. Jason. Remakes and reboots in the 2000s aimed to modernize the story, but fans have always returned to the classic entries for the pure, relentless terror of Jason himself. Across the decades, the combination of iconic imagery, memorable kills, and that simple, terrifying idea of a masked figure stalking the woods at night has made Friday the 13th a cornerstone of slasher cinema. Jason may rarely speak, but his presence alone is enough to keep audiences coming back for more. The Friday the 13th franchise has a total of 12 films with a runtime of 17 hours and 27 minutes. Some horror franchises thrive on killers, others on monsters, but the Conjuring Universe built its reputation on real-life hauntings. It all started with Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators whose cases inspired films filled with suspense, terror, and chilling true story claims. The universe began with The Conjuring in 2013, directed by James Wan, which introduced audiences to the Perron family hauntings and established the Warrens as the series' emotional and investigative anchors. The film's mix of atmospheric tension, jump scares, and grounded storytelling made it an instant hit. From there, the franchise expanded rapidly. Spin-offs like Annabelle and The Nun explored the origins of the cursed objects and entities that populated the main films, while sequels continued the Warrens' cases, including the notorious Amityville haunting and The Haunting in Enfield. Each entry doubled down on world building, creating a shared cinematic universe rare in horror. What sets the Conjuring universe apart is its consistency in tone and quality, along with its ability to weave real-life claims into supernatural thrills. Even as it grew into one of the most financially successful horror franchises ever, the core appeal remained: well-crafted scares, memorable characters, and a universe where the paranormal feels terrifyingly close to home. The Conjuring Universe has 10 films with a runtime of 18 hours and 27 minutes. Haddonfield, Illinois might look like a quiet suburban town, but in the world of Halloween it's ground zero for terror. Michael Myers, the masked silent killer, is the embodiment of evil. He doesn't talk, he doesn't explain, he simply hunts. John Carpenter's original 1978 film set a new standard for slasher cinema, combining minimalist suspense, an iconic synth score, and a chilling performance from Nick Castle as Michael. It turned the simple act of babysitting into a nightmare scenario that audiences would never forget. Over the years, the franchise has explored different timelines and interpretations. Sequels in the 80s and 90s expanded the lore, while Rob Zombie's 2007 reboot gave the character a gritty, backstory-heavy makeover. Then in 2018, the series returned to its roots with a direct sequel to the original, ignoring decades of sequels and cementing Michael Myers as a timeless horror icon. What keeps Halloween enduring is its pure primal terror. Michael's silent, unstoppable presence taps into a fear that never fades, and the franchise has shown remarkable flexibility, reinventing itself for a new generation while staying true to the original's terrifying spirit. The Halloween franchise has a total of 13 films with a runtime of 20 hours and 59 minutes. And that will do it for this list. What horror franchise do you think will be next to break into the top 10? Let us know in the comments. We have more videos on the way, so be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Until next time, take care.